A 4-year-old child named Kotaro decides to live alone in a new apartment. As he goes to the supermarket, he buys some boxes of tissues and a small katana toy for any enemies he might face. When there is a main character, there are side characters, and here he is. This is Karino. He is a manga artist who lives next door to Kotaro's apartment. They are neighbors. Kotaro introduces himself as a little gentleman and gives Karino a box of tissues as a gift for his neighbor. After entering his apartment, Karino wonders why a 4-year-old is staying alone in an apartment without his family. Kotaro knocks on Karino's door again, wondering why he doesn't have a bathtub. Apparently, nobody in this building has a bathtub, so if someone wants to wash, they have to go to a public bathhouse. Later, Kotaro goes to the public bathhouse alone, but Karino joins him after seeing news about children being kidnapped for ransom. Kotaro gets some shampoo in his eyes, and Karino helps by washing his eyes and then his hair. After finishing the bath, Karino wants to ask Kotaro why he isn't living with his family, but he doesn't ask him. The next day, Kotaro leaves the house to go to the supermarket. Karino follows him to help since he is worried about him. While walking, a woman shows up and thanks Kotaro for the box of tissues he gave her. Apparently, she is Mizuki, who also lives in the same building as Kotaro and Karino. Mizuki is surprised that Karino is her neighbor, since she has never seen him before. Karino is also shocked to realize that Mizuki has been his neighbor all along. When they both go inside the supermarket, people mistake Karino and Kotaro for father and son. Karino asks Kotaro about his age. When Kotaro says he is 4 years old, Karino remembers having a girlfriend for years ago and wonders if Kotaro might be his son. As they go home, the thought that Kotaro might be his son disappears from Karino's mind. Later that day, Mizuki's job as a hostess is shown. As she receives her payment, a man texts her asking when they can meet. The next day, Kotaro and Karino find Mizuki lying on the floor. Seeing her, Kotaro gives her a chilled drink. He gives her the chilled drink to help soothe her eyes, because he knows she has been crying. Kotaro can detect if someone has cried, since he has seen many people cry before. After leaving Mizuki's apartment, Kotaro decides to clean the floor. While doing this, he hurts his knees and ends up putting many adhesive bandages on them. Kotaro helps Karino with his back by applying gel to it. He then asks Karino to draw his favorite character, Tanaseimon, on his adhesive bandages. This is the first time Kotaro smiles, and Karino loves his smile. Someone rings the bell at Kotaro's house. Kotaro recognizes him as Tamaru, another resident of the building, to whom he gave a box of tissues. Tamaru literally drags Kotaro to play with him at his house. He gives Kotaro a plush toy of Tanaseimon, Kotaro's favorite character. Kotaro accepts it, but tells him to stay away from him. After learning that Tamaru bought the plush toy for his son, Kotaro gives it back, saying he isn't a replacement for Tamaru's son. Kotaro goes back to his apartment and asks Karino if his drawings were a lie. Karino says, "I put all my thoughts into them." Then Karino asks if Kotaro's smile was a lie. Kotaro runs and shouts, "It wasn't a lie." Later that day, Kotaro watches the Tanaseimon anime in Karino's apartment, since Kotaro doesn't have a TV. The next day, Kotaro watches Tanaseimon in his apartment since he got a TV. It is announced that this will be the last episode of Tanaseimon. Tamaru enters Karino's house and tells him that the last episode of Tanaseimon is today. They end up watching Tanaseimon together with Kotaro. As the episode of Tanaseimon ends, Karino asks Kotaro if he will be okay without the TV on during the night. Kotaro responds, "Yes." And he goes to sleep. The bathhouse that Kotaro and Karino use ends up being closed due to some problems. Unable to wash himself, Kotaro distances himself from everyone. So he decides to wash himself in the kitchen sink because he thinks people will hate him if he smells bad. Kotaro is afraid and can't sleep, so Mizuki offers to join him for a sleepover where they can have fun together.
It should have been me, not him!
They have a lot of fun together, but Kotaro still can't sleep. The next morning, Kotaro had a dream that he was sleeping all night with Mizuki, and he feels better and excited from the dream. Kotaro decides to join kindergarten and goes alone. While other kids are with their parents, Kotaro tries to cope with being alone. His neighbors are worried because they can't find him anywhere, but then Kirino remembers that Kotaro had a blue hat like a kindergarten child. They all hurry to the kindergarten entrance to be with Kotaro, who is alone there, while all the other children are with their parents. And they manage to reach him in time. Kotaro is really happy about this, even though he doesn't show it to the others. The next day, Kotaro gets 4 balloons and pretends to be different people because the balloon man said he could only give 1 balloon per person. Later, he plays with the balloons as if they were his family members, showing just how lonely Kotaro feels. Kotaro ends up helping Kirino by going with him to his manga editor. There, Kotaro learns that the editor says harsh things to Kirino because he knows Kirino can do much better if he tries harder. The following day, Kotaro asks Tamaru to help him buy some fashionable clothes to make him look good. As they go, Kotaro keeps his sword pointed at Tamaru, so he won't pet him. After shopping, Tamaru learns that Kotaro bought fashionable clothes because he wants people to like him. Finally, when a police officer asks Tamaru if he is insulting Kotaro, Kotaro responds, "No, he is my friend." Tamaru is then able to pet Kotaro since he let his guard down. Since Kotaro learns that Mizuki may leave the apartment, he decides to visit the bar where she works and asks her to accompany him, simply to spend more time with her. So they decide to have a picnic together. Mizuki wants to take a photo of Kotaro, but he doesn't let her because he has a trauma. His dad found him through a photo on a website and wanted him back. Later, Kirino draws a picture of both Mizuki and Kotaro together. Since Kotaro doesn't have money, he receives money from his mother's life insurance. He doesn't know she's dead, because the people sending the money don't tell him who sent it. The next day, he visits his friend Kakaru. As always, Kotaro behaves like a mature man and a true gentleman. Seeing how his friend always relies on others for help, Kotaro manages to make him more independent. Another friend of Kotaro, Takuya, is tired of behaving well and doing everything his family tells him. He misbehaves and runs away to Kotaro, but by the end of the night, he still misses his parents and goes home. As Kotaro feels all alone and thinks no one cares about him, Kirino scolds him for coming home late. The next day, Kobayashi comes to give some money to Kotaro. This time, Kotaro makes her drink beer in an attempt to learn who is sending the money. However, Kobayashi still says that it is from a generous person. At Kotaro's school, Kirino attends the meeting with parents and teachers. However, he appears sleepy and uninterested, giving that impression to the other parents. However, the next day, when the teacher asks for parents' help with creating a festival and no one volunteers, Kirino says he can do everything alone, leaving every parent speechless. And so, Kirino takes care of the festival, with help from others like Mizuki, Tamaru, and even his manga editor. But he totally regrets it because it is too much work. However, seeing Kotaro enjoying the festival makes him happy, so he continues working on it. The next day, Kotaro goes with Kirino to the supermarket to buy some tissues. The tissues Kotaro buys are more expensive compared to the ones Kirino bought. As they both go home, Kotaro tells Kirino that the tissues are sweet. In the evening, while Kirino is working on his manga and listening to the news, a boy says, "When I was home alone, I would eat tissues because I couldn't cook anything, and their taste was actually sweet." Kirino then understands what Kotaro meant. The next day, Kirino tells Kotaro that he shouldn't buy high-quality tissues anymore, since he isn't alone. This inspires Kotaro. At school, the teacher is exhausted, but still puts a smile on her face when she appears before the children. As they prepare for a theater show, Kotaro asks for the character who smiles all the time. Then Kotaro goes in front of the class and smiles. Let's do a 5 seconds quiz. Detect the fake smile. This is the fake smile. Okay, let's head back to the recap. The next day, Kotaro tells the teacher that his smile was fake, just like hers when she pretends to smile despite being exhausted. The teacher is left speechless that Kotaro could see through her fake smile. At night in a forest, Kotaro meets his friend Ryota from the orphanage. Kotaro hadn't seen Ryota since he was taken away from his father. Now, Kotaro has escaped from his father and is living alone. They both came here because they promised each other long ago to watch the meteor shower on this day at this place. The next day, Kotaro ends up delivering the manga that Karino worked on to his editor because Karino was sick.
But then, the most unexpected and shocking thing happens. The manga editor says that he is married and has kids. This surprising news leaves everyone stunned. Of course, this brings hope to weebs and otakis, showing them that even they can find a wife one day, or they will hate this guy and become delusional. Ha ha ha, I am out people.
What?
Kotaro then advises him to return home, suggesting that his children may miss him by now. The manga editor then suggests Kotaro come with him to see some different Tanasaman merchandise. Kotaro accepts, but after seeing it, he tells him that he will go home. Even though Kotaro loves what he is seeing, he tells the manga editor that he should go home to his children and not stay here. After a while, Kotaro can't leave the place and ends up playing and spending a lot of time there. In the end, he regrets it because he is keeping the manga editor away from his children. When the manga editor visits Karino's house, he says he has a wife and kids. He also explains that he took Kotaro to see the Tanasaman merchandise because he wanted Kotaro to enjoy being a child and not be so mature. The next day at the supermarket, Kotaro sees a woman with a big belly handing out sample food for people to buy, and he buys it all. Then Kotaro asks the woman if the store owner forces her to eat all the leftover food. Judging by her big belly, the woman explains to him that she is pregnant with a baby. She adds that babies are made when two parents are in love with each other. This makes Kotaro wonder if his parents were in love when he was born. He even asks a cat if it remembers his parents from when he was little. The next day, a new neighbor moves into the building where Kotaro lives. Although the man seems innocent, he is actually a detective hired by Kotaro's dad to find his location since Kotaro ran away from his father. Since Aota is now everywhere with Kotaro, Tamaro gets annoyed and offers him money to leave. However, Aota tells him that he is hired by Kotaro's dad to find him. Kotaro knows Aota is hired by his father and tells him not to tell his dad where he is. For several days, Aota can't be found anywhere, so Karino, Mizuki, and Tamaro decide to stay with Kotaro wherever he goes to protect him, fearing he might be kidnapped and taken to his father. This makes Kotaro angry and makes him feel weak. The next day, Aota returns and tells everyone that he didn't reveal Kotaro's real location, sharing that he was also abused in his childhood and wouldn't do that to another child. Understanding that Kotaro is trying to become stronger so his father will become a better person, Karino tells him that he will be his rival, and together they will become stronger. As Aota leaves, Kotaro had given him a gift, a glass magnifier. The next day, Mizuki meets with her boyfriend and tells him she wants to break up with him, but he ends up abusing her. Scared that something may happen to her and that her boyfriend will show his bad side, Mizuki decides to listen to Kotaro and leaves the apartment building. Then a new neighbor joins the building. Her name is Sumair, and she is a strong, rule-abiding woman who feels uncomfortable around children. Knowing that she is afraid of children, Kotaro intentionally follows her to help her feel more comfortable around them. To help her overcome her fear even more, Kotaro gets all his friends to chase Sumair. Wondering why Kotaro is fat here, he ate all the leftover food his friends left, because he knows how important food is. The next day, it rains, and Kotaro offers to help different people by holding an umbrella for them so they don't get wet. As he helps, his shoulder gets soaked by the raindrops. This method was taught to Kotaro by his father. When Kotaro asked why his shoulder was getting wet, his father explained that it shows the person cares more about the other person than themselves. While walking with his mother, Kotaro's shoulder gets wet instead. As we all know, Kotaro lived at an orphanage for a while. Now, one of his friends from there has come to visit him. His name is Tasuku. And no, he's not a Saiyan, just a regular boy. Kotaro invites him to his home, and Tasuku asks for some money to buy a house so they can live together. Without hesitation, Kotaro gives him all the money he asks for. Even though everyone warns Kotaro that Tasuku might be lying to get his money, Kotaro decides to trust him. Kotaro knew from the beginning that Tasuku was lying, because whenever Tasuku lies, he plays around with his pointing finger. But still, Kotaro gives him the money, because he trusts him, and sees him as Sir Tasuku. After several days, Kotaro collects cans to fulfill his dream of living in a castle with Tasuku, Ryo, Karino, Mizuki, Tamaru, Take, and Kobayashi. Meanwhile, Tasuku is working with Ryota, after punching him for betraying Kotaro. Good news comes to Karino. His manga editor says that his story might be turned into a long-term anime series. Then he leaves since it's time to pick up Kotaro. He even tells his manga editor that he will make time for both his manga and Kotaro. A woman named Nita comes to pick up Kotaro. She tells him that she knows Karino and describes him as lazy. Kotaro accepts this and goes with her home. As Kotaro is gathering his stuff to leave, the teacher gives Nita a paper for the kindergarten showcase to give to Karino, and she takes it. Karino scolds Kotaro for coming home with a stranger, and then asks Nita if the teacher gave her anything, and she says no. 3 days earlier, Nita came to Karino's house and said she had a fight with her boyfriend. Nita is actually Karino's ex, and she ended up staying at his home. She decides to separate Kotaro and Karino from their time spent together, telling Kotaro that she will now do everything he did with Karino because Karino has to work on his manga. This makes Kotaro sad, and makes him think he is a burden to Karino. Still, Karino does his best to go wherever Kotaro goes, even though he doesn't know what Nita said to Kotaro. When Nita asks him if there is anything important in his schedule today, Karino responds with, "My manga deadline, but today is actually the day of the kindergarten showcase." At the school, everyone else has their parents with them, which makes Kotaro sad. But then Karino is there and encourages him to sing more, which makes Kotaro happier. Karino says to Nita that he has decided to spend time with Kotaro, so they both can become stronger and cherish these memories one day. He even tells her that Kotaro is the reason his manga has reached the next level. After hearing this, Nita asks Kotaro to forgive her and tells him to take care of Karino, as they both need each other to become stronger. And so their routines go back to normal, with Nita eventually leaving Karino's house. In a flashback from Kotaro's memories, he is shown ringing the bell of a famous clothes designer named Tamamori. As Tamamori sees the dirty clothes that Kotaro is wearing, he can't stand to see them treated so poorly, and decides to wash them for Kotaro. As he sees the design of a t-shirt created by Tamamori, Kotaro calls it corny. The next day, Kotaro gets his t-shirt washed again by Tamamori. This time, when shown the t-shirt in real that he created, Kotaro still calls it corny. While Tamamori is with his friend, he sees Kotaro ringing someone's doorbell. He tells Kotaro that he is becoming a nuisance by ringing everyone's doorbells. But then his friend tells Tamamori that the kid might be very lonely and probably doesn't have any friends, so he just wants to talk to someone. The next day, Tamamori decides to give Kotaro his new t-shirts and encourages him to keep knocking on doors until he achieves his goals. In the present day, a newspaper delivery man arrives late with Kotaro's newspaper. Kotaro asks if he's okay and praises him for delivering newspapers so early in the morning. The newspaper delivery boy thinks someone made Kotaro buy the newspapers, so he advises Kotaro to cancel the subscription. If you see my newspaper stuck here for 2 days, please come inside to check on me. I live alone and have no one else to look after me. During the day, while watching TV, Kotaro notices a place he visited with his mother. He decides to go there and check if she's around. But since it's far and already late, Karino suggests they go early tomorrow morning instead. But Karino ends up sleeping, and Kotaro calls him a liar. They still manage to go there, although a bit late. Kotaro decides to visit his grandparents' grave and clean it up. Kotaro tells Karino that his mother's name was Sayori while they clean the graves. After cleaning one side of the grave, Karino stays there without moving, even though Kotaro tells him he's in the way of his prayers. Karino stays there because he doesn't want Kotaro to know his mom is dead. He believes she's still alive. While watching a mother and her child together, Kotaro asked Karino if he could meet his mom again someday. Karino tells him of course, which makes Kotaro happy because he believes Karino wouldn't lie to him. After they return home, Karino asks Kotaro to always let him know when he visits his grandparents' grave, so he can also pay his respects. When they meet Tamaru and Sumair, Kotaro introduces Karino as his loyal follower. And so, they all live happily together. It seems we've reached the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed this anime recap. Feel free to let me know which anime you'd like me to recap next. Liking the video and subscribing to the channel would greatly support us in growing further. Until next time, take care and see you soon.